Okay.
Detail, present, form. Detail, present, form.
I'm gonna go give that to Dad.
Good morning, everyone. This is Susan. Can you give me a thumbs up? Can you hear me? Okay. I would like to thank everyone for coming this morning and honoring our veterans on this special day. I would like to especially thank them for their service and helping us be a free country. And I had preschoolers telling me today and kindergartners yesterday that they were so thankful that they are free because of our veterans. And they were looking forward to honoring you today. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over
Fourth grade are going to present the timeline of U.S. wars and conflicts. American rivalry war from 1775 to 1784. Established the United States as a nation.
Ivory Coast War from 1801 to 1805 fought over trade issues with North Africa.
War of 1812 from 1812 to 1850, War of Britain's disregard for U.S. rights on the high seas. Indian Wars from 1817 to 1889, time of many conflicts between Native Americans and settlers, established where the Native Americans lived.
Mexican-American War from 1846 to 1848 gave us control of the America Southwest.
American Civil War from 1861 to 1865 established that the United States would stay one country. Slavery abolished.
Spanish-American War of 1898 gave the United States control of Puerto Rico, Philippines, and Guam.
From this war on, the United States defends freedom by fighting on the soil of other nations in the world.
World War I from 1917 to 1918. The Allied powers, which included the United States, defeated the Central Powers of Austria, Hungary, the German Empire, Bulgaria, and the Ottoman Empire.
World War II from 1940 to 1947. The Allied powers defeated the Axis powers led by Adolf Hitler.
Korean War from 1950 to 1953. Civil War between North and South Korea to halt the spread of communism.
Vietnam War from 1959 to 1975. Halt the spread of communism in Southeast Asia. Cold War with Russia from 1945 to 1991. Halt the spread of communism in Eastern Europe.
Gulf Wars or Desert Storm from 1990 to 1991, mandated by the United Nations to deliver Kuwait.
Iraq War from 2003 to 2011. Overthrow Iraq leader Saddam Hussein in order to form a new government.
Afghanistan War or Global War on Terrorism from October 7, 2001 to present, seeking out Taliban and other terrorists aimed at destroying democracy and the freedom it represents. We hope you have enjoyed our timeline of U.S. wars and conflicts.
Okay, I know that's it. I'm trying to set it. Just want that one to zoom out. But it's just a screen.
I would like to introduce today's speaker, my uncle Jim Weber. He was a major in the Air Force and served 20 years along with 10 years as a civilian in the Army.
Well, thank you
so much for inviting me. It really is an honor because after being retired from the Air Force for 25 years, last year was the first time I was ever invited to anything as special as this. And so I thank you, and I thank all of the students, including the little ones, for being so well behaved and for respecting the customs of our nation, our flag, and our wonderful anthem. All my brothers and sisters in uniform, I thank you for your service. We don't hear that very often. We have recently, but it seems that we don't hear it enough. At any rate, when Gayla, my wonderful niece, invited me to speak, I said, well, what in the heck can I say? And she says, well, just, tell them about what you did, where you were, and all that kind of thing. And so I said, well, maybe the best way to do this is to tell it like a story. And that reminded me of my grandmother. She came over from Germany in 1926. She was 18 years old. She did not speak a word of English, except maybe hello. She was only going to be here a year. She only had $100. And in 1926, that was a pretty good amount. And she did have a job when she got here. Well, she never went back home. America was a dream for her. At first, it was a dream for her to just be able to visit and to see what this was all about. She never went home. She used to read stories to my brother and I when we were little, your age, some of you. And she would read these stories, and most of them were adventures. Most of them were like the Lone Ranger. They were some sorts of books that would take us to other places, take us on the sea, take us just about any place other than Kansas. And so she was great at that, and every once in a while, she would break into German. She was reading English, which was her second language. And then every once in a while, she'd use a German word and tell my brother and I what that meant. And every once in a while, she'd tell us the stories of what it was like to be a little girl growing up in Germany. And it always stuck with me. One thing that she always told me, or she told me once, and I never forgot it, was that everybody has a story, and it's written like a book. So everybody's life is a book of life. And the only one who writes in that book is you. The only one who really gets to flip the pages and write the paragraphs and make differences in a life and in that book is you. You write it. And every time there's a significant event in your life, you flip the page on one chapter and you start another chapter. And it's amazing how I've remembered that all these years, and it is so very true. So, excuse me a second while I get my nose back here. Anyway, let me tell you my story, and then I've got another story that I'm going to tell you, both of which are true. But let me start with mine first. I was born and raised in Leavenworth, Kansas. I'm a Kansan like so many of you, probably most of you, if not all of you. Leavenworth's about 80 miles away. I grew up out in the country, 2 miles north of Leavenworth. And had a lot of farms around me. I was a country boy, but did not live on a farm. I was fortunate enough to have some parents who taught me early on what it was like to work hard, because we didn't have much. But they showed me what it was like to do a job the best you could. Do it right the first time, was what my dad always told me. And I was also pretty good in school, and I had dreams, like many of you have dreams. One of my dreams was to fly. One of my other dreams was to play baseball. I was a pretty good athlete, and I just loved baseball. But we were close to Kansas City, and I loved to watch the airplanes fly over, and I wanted to fly. And I wanted to go someplace different. Not because I disliked Kansas. I didn't know the difference between Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, or anything. I'd never gone anywhere. So I was dreaming all these things when I was 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, wondering if I would ever do anything important, ever get to see anything different, ever get to play professional baseball, ever get to do anything, and would those dreams ever come true? Fortunately, I did pretty good in school, and I was also pretty good at baseball. So when I got through with high school, my dream was to go and try out for professional baseball. Unfortunately, we had a war going on, which many of my brothers sitting in front of me here fought in, and it was the Vietnam War. And we had a draft, which is something that you all don't have to worry about, hopefully ever have to worry about. But I was, if I was going to go play baseball, my mom grabbed me and she said, you're not going to get drafted in baseball, but you may very well get drafted into the Army or the Marines. And I said, okay. She said, we've got the money and you're going to college. There's no two ifs, ands, buts about it. You've got the brains. We're not going to waste it. Not that these individuals wasted. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is there were choices to be made, and I made a choice. Actually, my mom made the choice. So I went to Washburn University down at Topeka. And I got involved in Reserve Officer Training Corps. That is a nice word for kind of like being cadets, training to be an officer in the Air Force. And I did it on a whim. I didn't really know what it was about. I didn't really know that much about the Air Force, the Army, or hardly anything. So I got into ROTC and I spent 4 years. And my senior year in college, I met my wonderful and beautiful wife, who basically flipped one of those chapters in my book, flipped it over, and I finished a whole big part, that first part of my life, and started a brand new chapter with her. And that was over 46 years ago. We've been together ever since. She got me through my senior year in college. A lot of people wonder, how in the hell did you ever do that, Susie? Anyway, she did. She got me through. I was commissioned. I graduated and got commissioned in the Air Force as a second lieutenant. And our very first assignment was California. Went out to a place called Lompoc, Vandenberg Air Force Base in California, to learn how to be a missileer. Had no idea what a missileer was. I wanted to fly, but my eyes kept me away from flying. They said, if you can't see the airplane, we're not going to let you fly. So I said, okay, fine. I said, okay, with glasses, you can see what you need to do for missiles. I said, what kind of missiles are we talking about? Missiles you strap on underneath an airplane or what? And they said, no, nuclear missiles. I said, wow, okay, nuclear-tipped missiles. So we went to Vandenberg and we spent 2 months of intense training. I thought I'd seen some discipline and what was needed in school. I was so wrong, it was unbelievable. Because they never stopped testing us. When you start to use or be able to operate a missile system that is nuclear tipped, there are no accidents that can happen because it's the most dangerous weapon in the world. At any rate, there I was, 22 years old, second lieutenant, and they put me, after we got to F.E. Warren in Cheyenne, Wyoming, I got certified as a missile launch officer, and I went 70 feet underground into a launch control facility because I knew how to launch missiles. I had to go to war codes in a safe. I wore a gun, and I had keys. We didn't push red buttons. We had a bunch of those, but we didn't push them to launch the missiles. We turned keys. Well, I spent 4 years doing that and was down in that hole 70 feet underground. It was a 10 by 22 foot living space. There were only 2 of us down there, a commander and a deputy. And I spent 201 alerts underground, 4 years. As it turns out, another chapter of my life got flipped over because I found out I was pretty doggone good at operating things. Operating meaning being able to turn the keys, follow the procedures, hit the switches, know what the lights mean, know what all the indications were that you either had some faults, you had some problems, or whatever. It was a whole lot like flying an airplane, believe it or not. We had some of the same procedures. What happens when you have a fire, so on and so forth. So it ended up that I was pretty good at it, and so Susie and I decided, since I owed the Air Force 4 years and I finished it, and there we were in very cold Cheyenne, Wyoming, said, well, what are you going to do next? Do you want to stay in missiles? We want to stay in the Air Force. And it took us 2 seconds to figure out we wanted to stay in the Air Force. But I wanted to do something different. So my next assignment, I went to MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, Florida. So I went from Cheyenne, Wyoming to Tampa, Florida. Wonderful warmth. Susie loved it. We had a son by then. He loved it too. And I was in a completely new business. And I do mean new. It was called space operations. And again, I was operating things. In this particular case, I started operating radar systems and satellite systems that detected whether or not our country was being attacked. So we didn't have a whole lot of time. Time pressure was very, very rigid. And again, the procedures were very, very hard. And we never stopped getting tested. Okay, so that's what I did for the next 16 years. I went to a number of places and did a number of things. Susie and I were stationed in England for 2 years, way up north at a Royal Air Force Base, and we were the only Americans for 80 miles around. Everybody else was British. Our 2 little boys went to a school. They were the only foreign kids in the school. It was a wonderful assignment. It's the one that you see me in my mess kit, as we called it, the mess dress. That was taken in England. We've still got really good friends in England, British friends, that we will never forget. And that was just one adventure. I ended up going, and this is something you'll have to ask your teachers to show you on a map. I spent some TDY time, that's temporary duty time, in a place called Thule, Greenland. A lot of people can't find Greenland on a map. Thule is 600 miles north of the Arctic Circle. I went there 3 times. They have a radar site up there. I also spent a year in Alaska, in the middle of Alaska. You can see Mount McKinley from where I was at, and there's a big radar site there. I spent a year there without my wife and kids. Like so many of my brothers and sisters down front here, they had to do the same thing. A year is a long time. Believe it or not, it seems even longer when you're doing it alone. Fortunately, I had brothers and sisters. And like so many of the rest of the veterans, we took care of ourselves. There was always somebody watching your back. Okay, so after all of that, I ended up retiring as a major, went out in the civilian world, flip another chapter of that book, and I ended up, because I knew so much about satellite systems and high-tech systems, I had a master's degree in space systems management. I was about, Susie says, about that far away from being a rocket scientist. Actually, I was about that far away. But anyway, I knew a lot about orbital mechanics. I taught it at school, and I taught a course at college called The Fundamentals of Spaceflight. I made that course myself because no place else in a junior college, no place else in the United States had a course like it. And so I dreamt it up, kind of like I'm doing this speech, because I can talk forever about almost nothing. So, at any rate, I got to do all those things. It's called experience. And I was able to get into civilian. 4 different companies were foolish enough to hire me because they thought I knew something. And it was always in the high-tech ends of things. It was always taking care of networks, computers, and systems. And so I got paid very, very well. It was primarily because of my education and experience in the Air Force. So, after I got through with being in civilian companies like AT&T and Sprint and that kind of thing, 9/11 occurred. And I'm sure all of you remember or will know what 9/11 is, even though some of you weren't born yet. We, as adults, all remember what 9/11 was. I came back to the military as a civilian. In 2002, I basically joined the Civilian Corps of the Army up at Fort Leavenworth. And I was on a travel training team. They needed some Air Force guys who knew something about space. I knew something about space. Because at that time, the Army was pretty well trying to figure out what kind of resources they had to fight the new wars. So I helped. For 10 years, I helped them as a civilian. In those 10 years, I kept flipping pages of that book. I kept putting on new chapters. Because I got to visit some places I don't care to see again, but some of them were pretty amazing. I got to Korea, South Korea, 12 times. I got to Japan twice. I got to Germany 8 times. I got to Italy once. I got to Kuwait for over 50 days in the sand. And I really started to figure out why everybody, including my grandmother, wanted to come to America. It's because we are the greatest country on the face of the earth. Don't let anybody else tell you differently. It is true. Gentlemen that are sitting in front of me, my brothers and sisters in uniform, all the veterans who have ever gone overseas and seen something different, know exactly what I'm talking about. And too many people probably take it for granted. I don't. Never again. I also got to visit Turkey, another wonderful place. Now, I did that earlier on when I was in the space business, but I got to tell you, I was in a location that is no longer there, and it was very muchly in what I fought most of my military career. It was called the Cold War. Everything that I did in missiles and in space was during the Cold War. And in Turkey, when I went to this radar site that nobody knew about, I was 100 miles from Iraq, 100 miles from the Soviet Union, 100 miles from Syria. I was in the middle of nowhere. And there were only like 20 of us Americans there. Everybody else was Turkish. And you talk about feeling alone. That was one place that I really felt it. When I got back home, I actually got down off the airplane and kissed the ground. Kissed the ground. So happy to be an American. At any rate, making this very short story into a long one, let me tell you what this book is that I'm still flipping pages and doing chapters of. What I actually learned in all these pages that I've been fortunate enough to write. First thing I learned was that loyalty counts a lot. Loyalty to your family, your God, and your country. That's it. If you've got loyalty to those three, you can't go wrong. Another one is personal responsibility. When you do something, when you do it right, don't be afraid to take credit for it. Don't brag, but be proud of the fact that you did it. On the other hand, you do something wrong, personal responsibility says you admit it and you take the consequences. It's another thing you learn in the military. If you make a bad step, in a lot of cases, these men here will tell you that you lose a life. Somebody gets hurt. In my business down in a missile silo, if I made a mistake, a whole bunch of people would have been hurt. Probably millions. So we did not make any mistakes. The pressure was pretty severe, but the fact is, you got to learn how to handle that pressure. Never let anyone tell you you cannot think, read, voice, or dream something that they don't. Think for yourself. Read as much as you can. See as much as you can. It's called exposure. Expose yourself to different things, different thoughts, different people, different ways of life. And I'm thoroughly convinced if you have an open mind and you get a chance to do that, when you come back home, you'll bend down and you'll kiss the ground just like I did. There is no place like the place where we live, America. Okay. That's my story. Let me tell you another one. This one's also true. Listen carefully, because this one's pretty cool. In September of 2005, on the first day of school, Martha Coffin, a teacher at Robinson High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, did something not to be forgotten. On the first day of school, with the permission of the school superintendent, the principal, and the building supervisor, she removed all the desks in her classroom. Mrs. Coffin, where are the desks? Asked the students. She replied, you can't have a desk until you tell me how you earn the right to sit at that desk. They thought, well, maybe it's our grades. She said, nope. Maybe it's our behavior. She told them, no, it is not even your behavior. And so they came and went the first period, second period, third period. Still no desks in the classroom. Kids called their parents to tell them what a wacko this teacher was and what she was doing, and no desks. And early in the afternoon, television news crews arrived, and they started to have a gathering at the school to report this crazy teacher. The final period of the day came, and as the puzzled students found seats on the floor of the deskless classroom, Martha Coughlin said, "Throughout the day, no one has been able to tell me just what he or she has done to earn the right to sit at the desks that are ordinarily found in this classroom. Now I'm going to tell you how that is." At this point, Martha Coughlin went over to the door of her classroom, opened it, and 27 U.S. veterans, all in uniform, walked into the classroom, each one of them carrying a school desk. The vets began placing the school desks in rows, and then they would walk over and stand along the wall. By the time the last veteran had set the final desk in place, those kids started to understand, perhaps for the first time in their lives, just how the right to sit at those desks had been earned. Martha said, "You didn't earn the right to sit at these desks. These heroes did it for you. They placed the desks here for you. They went halfway around the world, giving up their education and interrupting their careers, their dreams, and their families, so you could have the freedom you have. Now it's up to you to sit in those desks. It is your responsibility to learn, to be good students, to be good citizens. They paid the price so that you could have the freedom to get an education. Don't ever forget it." Thank you so much.
It was a great story. I gotta snap that
Oh, they're gonna sing it. That's what they're calling it. I'm kind of excited for this call.
The Ragged Old Flag, written by Johnny Cash. I walked through a country courthouse square. On a park bench, an old man was sitting there. I said, "Your old courthouse is kind of run down." And he said, "Nah, it'll do for our little town." I said, "Your flagpole has leaned a little bit, and that's a ragged old flag you've got hanging on it." He said, "Have a seat," and I sat down. "Is this the first time you've been to our little town?" I said, "I think it is." And he said, "I don't like to brag, but we're kind of proud of that ragged old flag."
You see, we got a little hole in that flag there when Washington took it across the Delaware, and I got powder burned the night Francis Scott Key sat watching it, writing, "Oh say can you see?" And it got a bad rip in New Orleans with Packenham and Jackson tugging at its seams, and it almost fell at the Alamo beside the Texas flag as she waved on through. She got cut with a sword at Chancellorsville, and she got cut again at Shiloh Hill. There was Robert E. Lee, Beauregard, and Bragg, and the South wind blew hard on that ragged old flag.
On Flanders Field in World War I, she got a big hole from a Bertha gun. She turned blood red in World War II. She hung limp and low by the time it was through. She was in Korea and Vietnam, She went where she was sent by her Uncle Sam. She waved from our ships upon the briny foam, and now they've about quit waving her back here at home. In her own good land she's been abused, she's been burned, dishonored, denied, and refused.
And the government for which she stands is scandalized throughout the land. And she's getting threadbare and wearing thin, but she's in good shape for the shape she's in. Because she's been through the fire before, and I believe she can take a whole lot more. So we raise her up every morning, take her down every night. We don't let her touch the ground, and we fold her upright. On second thought, I do like to brag, because I'm mighty proud of that ragged old flag.
Flags. Go flags. You know what the music says? What? Yeah, yes, how are you? Are you done with your physics test? Slap. What? Okay. He's finished. Everybody's done except for like 4 people.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Rager. We are going to tell you about the history of the flag. The American flag was designed and sewn by a seamstress from Philadelphia named Betsy Ross in May of 1776.
A year later, the American flag became the official flag of our nation on June 14, 1777.
The first design contained 15 stripes. It was the flag that inspired Francis Scott Key to write the poem that later became known as the Triumphal Banner of the King of Ireland, Fort McHenry during the War of 1812.
It wasn't until 1818 when the design permanently changed the number of stripes to 15.
Today the flag contains 13 horizontal stripes, 7 red and 6 white.
A blue square in the top left-hand corner contains 50 white stars.
The 50 white stars represent the 50 states of the U.S. The 13 stripes stand for the 13 British colonies that declared independence from the Kingdom of Great Britain.
The 13 colonies became the first states in the U.S.
On August 3, 1949, President Harry S. Truman officially declared June 14th Flag Day.
Lastly, the flag has many other nicknames, including the Stars and Stripes, Old Glory, Red, White, and Blue, and the Star-Spangled Banner.
The colors of the American flag and their meaning.
Did you know that when the American flag was adopted in 1977, the colors of the American flag did not matter? However, the colors of the American seal did matter. Did you know that Charles Thompson, reporting to Congress on the seal, stated,
The colors of the pales, the vertical stripes, are those used in the flag of the United States of America. White signifies purity and innocence, red, hardness and valor, and blue, the colors of the chief, the broad band above the stripes, signifies vigilance, perseverance, and justice. That is how they got their meaning. I hope you liked our fourth grade presentation.
My name is Old Glory by Sergeant Major John S. Mellon, United States Air Force. I am the flag of the United States of America. My name is Old Glory.
I fly atop the world's tallest buildings. I stand watch in America's halls of justice. I fly majestically over great institutes of learning. I stand guard with the greatest military power in the world. Look up and see me.
I stand for peace, honor, truth, and justice. I stand for freedom. I am confident. I am arrogant. I am proud. When I am flown my fellow banners, my head is a little higher, my colors a little truer.
I bow to no one. I am recognized all over the world. I am worshipped. I am saluted. I am respected. I am revered. I am loved, and I am feared.
I have fought every battle of every war for more than 200 years. Gettysburg, Shiloh, Appomattox, San Juan Hill, the trenches of France, the Argonne Forest, Anzio, Rome, the beaches of Normandy, the deserts of Africa, the cane fields of the Philippines, the rice paddies and jungles of Guam, Okinawa, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, and a score of places long forgotten by all but those who were with me. I was there.
I led my soldiers. I followed them. I watched over them. They loved me. I was on a small hill in Iwo Jima. I was dirty, battle-worn, and tired. My soldiers cheered me, and I was proud.
I have been soiled, burned, torn, and trampled on the streets of countries I have helped set free. It does not hurt, for I am invincible. I have been soiled, burned, torn, and trampled on the streets of my country. And when it is by with those with whom I am served, in battle, it hurts. But I shall overcome, for I am strong. I have slipped the bonds of earth and stand watch over the uncharted new frontiers of space from my vantage point on the moon.
I have been a silent witness to all of America's finest hours, but my finest hour comes when I am torn into strips to be used for bandages for my wounded comrades on the field of battle, when I fly at half-mast to honor my soldiers, and when I lie in the trembling arms of a grieving mother at the grave side of her fallen son.
I am proud. My name is Old Glory. Dear God, long may I wait.
What does this do?
If we could please have all of our veterans stand and face the crowd. We're going to have them introduce themselves to you.
Good morning. My name is Milton Falk, and I serve in the United States Army.
Ardell Q. Falk, and I also served in the U.S. Army.
I am Laverne Figge, and I served in the United States Army.
I'm Darrell Pennick, and I served in the U.S. Army.
I'm Jack Burner, and I served in Korea.
I'm Robert Bean, and I served in the U.S. Navy.
Friel Frazier, U.S. Army.
I'm Tex Manuel. I served in the United States Army as a mechanic on an airplane.
Good morning. Don Most, U.S. Army.
Dale Calderman, U.S. Army. Jim Morgan, U.S. Army.
Lee Abbott, United States Navy.
Jim Weber, United States Air Force, 20 years. Army civilian, 10 years. 30 years with the military. Loved 99% of it.
Earl Cordell, United States Army, Corps of Engineers.
Roger Sarles, United States Air Force.
Sergeant First Class Collins, retired, 20 years, United States Army.
Dwayne Wagg, United States Army.
Lieutenant Colonel Wagg, United States Army.
Alan Abel, United States Army.
Roger Sorrells II, U.S. Navy.
Ron Hedges, United States Navy.
Sherry Akers, United States Air Force.
Ian Malad, United States Marine Corps.
I'm going to bring it over to the other side here.
J.D. Richardson, U.S. Army.
David Porter, U.S. Army.
Did I get the microphone to all veterans in the room?
Nick Nolte, United States Navy.
Harry Taylor, United States Army.
Now have has each veteran got a chance to introduce themselves? Again, we thank you for your service and your commitment. I think that we've got one other item on our agenda. You guys want to go ahead and take a seat again? We're going to finish the program. Okay, as we come to a close here, I'd just like to thank again our veterans from the American Legion and the VFW and all our veterans. Many of us have been touched by the lives of a veteran and their service. My father is a veteran. Many of you have fathers, grandfathers, aunts, uncles, grandmothers, etc. that are veterans that have taken time, taken part of their lives, and served our country to give us the freedoms that we have today. I thank you for your service and for your sacrifices that you have made, as well as those of your families who also sacrificed for the freedom that we enjoy today. So thank you very much. Thank you, boys and girls, for behaving so well. And in closing, we're going to start with retiring the colors, and then we have one of our own playing the taps.
Oh, is Joey playing the taps?
Yeah.